A U.S. Navy destroyer cuts through the Caribbean, radar sweeping the horizon. Just 15 nautical miles off Venezuela's coast, its sensors lock into a patrol boat flying the Venezuelan flag. The distance is close enough for tension, but too far for comfort. So how did a drug war morph into a naval standoff between Washington and Caracas? The answer starts with geography. Venezuela's northern coastline stretches over 2,800 kilometers, dotted with deepwater ports like Puerto Cabello and La Guaria. These harbors connect to a dense network of highways and rivers, making them ideal nodes for both legal trade and illicit trafficking. The Orinoco River, running over 2,100 kilometers inland, links remote jungle labs to the Atlantic, bypassing most land checkpoints. Caribbean Sea narrows to just 100 nautical miles between Venezuela and U.S. allied islands like Aruba and Curaçao. These islands host forward operating locations for U.S. aircraft and surveillance drones, placing American sensors within direct line of sight of Venezuelan coastal activity. By 2020, U.S. P-8 Poseidon patrols could monitor ship movements from the air, while destroyers like the USS Pinckney operated within international waters but close enough to intercept suspected traffickers. But why does this matter for drug flows? Well, Venezuela's ports became critical transshipment points after Colombia ramped up security on its own Caribbean coast. Intelligence estimated that 210 metric tons of cocaine transited Venezuela annually, much of it loaded onto go-fast boats or semi-submersible bound for Central America and the U.S. Gulf Coast. The U.S. Southern Command responded by increasing naval patrols, deploying up to 22 ships and 10,000 personnel for interdiction missions in the region. The surge in U.S. presence triggered a counter-move from Caracas. Now, the Venezuelan Navy, though limited in blue water capability, began shadowing U.S. vessels with its own patrol boats and corvettes. In March 2020, the Venezuelan patrol ship Nagueta collided with the Portuguese-flagged cruise ship RCGS Resolute after attempting to force it into port. The incident, just 13 nautical miles from Venezuelan shores, underscored how quickly routine patrols could escalate. So by any measure, the standoff is shaped by sensor reach and missile range. U.S. destroyers field Aegis radar arrays and SM-2 missiles with a range exceeding 160 kilometers, allowing them to track and engage threats well before entering Venezuelan waters. Now, Venezuelan ships, in contrast, rely on shorter-range sensors and Soviet-era anti-ship missiles, effective only within 50 kilometers. This asymmetry means U.S. forces can operate with relative impunity, but any miscalculation risks rapid escalation. That said, the real leverage comes from maritime interdiction. By positioning ships along key transit routes, the U.S. can disrupt trafficking networks and squeeze the Maduro government's access to hard currency. In alone, U.S. interdictions in the Caribbean seized over $1.6 billion worth of cocaine. This pressure campaign is designed to deny the regime both revenue and freedom of movement at sea. But the presence of warships also offers Maduro a propaganda tool now. Caracas frames the U.S. patrols as violations of sovereignty, rallying domestic support and justifying military exercises along the coast. In May 2020, Venezuela conducted live fire drills with Russian-supplied S-300 air defense systems, signaling readiness to target foreign aircraft or ships approaching too closely. So how does this change the calculus between Venezuela and the US? The risk is not just accidental collision, but deliberate escalation. With both sides operating close to the boundary of territorial waters, just 12 nautical miles from shore, there's little margin for error. A misidentified radar contact or a warning shot could trigger a broader confrontation, as we're seeing right now. And that will draw in regional allies and complicate U.S. counter-narcotics policy. Meanwhile, the geography of the Caribbean ensures that any standoff is inherently multilateral. And now, Dutch, French, and British territories lie within radar range of Venezuelan missile batteries, pass within sight of naval patrols, raising the stakes for global trade. So now, if we zoom out, the naval standoff is less about ideology than logistics. Control of sea lanes, sensor coverage, and interdiction capability shape the incentives for both Washington and Caracas. And again, this is not a moral judgment, it's an analysis of incentives and logistics. As long as Venezuela's coastline remains a gateway for illicit flows, and as long as U.S. warships patrol just over the horizon, the risk of confrontation persists. And today, as Trump threatens Venezuela, the drug war has become a contest of presence, reach, and resolve, played out in the narrow waters of the Caribbean. So if you like this kind of content, make sure you like and subscribe for more.